Fun one today. Comedian Tom Brady was at the White House. Tom is also known as the quarterback for the Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He told Joe Biden, "I think about 40% of the people still don't think we won." That's really funny. Biden said, "I understand that." Brady said, "You understand that, Mr. President?" Biden smiled and said, "I understand that." And Brady said, "Yeah, and personally, it's nice for me to be back here. We had a game in Chicago where I forgot what down it was. I lost track of one down in 21 years of playing, and they started calling me Sleepy Tom. Why would they do that to me?" Biden said, "I don't know. That's a lot of fun." Late Night had a field day with Jeff Bezos' space launch the other day. Now, before the launch, Bezos boasted about bringing a pair of goggles that had belonged to Amelia Earhart on the spaceflight. Stephen Colbert said, "That's an interesting choice for a good luck charm." Okay, we've got Amelia Earhart's goggles. We have a chunk of the iceberg from the Titanic. And in here, we've got Abraham Lincoln's playbill. Let's go. Colbert said, "Here's how I know it's not important. I hosted the last one of these, okay, for Branson. A lot of fun, but talk show hosts don't anchor historic events, except, of course, when Arsenio Hall interviewed the Berlin Wall. Anthony Anderson is guest hosting for Kimmel and said, millions of people all over the world looked up and said, wow, that thing sure looks like a penis. I did that myself. It really does." Colbert, "I guess it's true what they say. Billionaires and their rockets end up looking just like each other. Ouch." Fallon, "It's the only rocket that shrinks in the cold." Tariq Trotter from the Tonight Show house band said they designed it at the Johnson Space Center. Fallon, "It looks like R2-D2 took some Viagra." Tariq Trotter, "They don't keep it in a hanger. They keep it in the top drawer of a bedside table." Colbert, "When they landed, the billion knots sprayed each other with champagne like it was the end of a yacht race. If something is really important, it doesn't need a big wet celebration. You'll remember Buzz Aldrin did not douse Neil Armstrong with Gatorade." And then they went in on Jeff Bezos wearing a cowboy hat. Fallon, "I guess space turns you into Kenny Chesney." Let me jump in there. When we're done with the podcast, Google Kenny Chesney without hat. It will blow your mind. Kenny Chesney without a hat might as well be your friend Ken from accounting. You would never, ever see this guy coming and realize he's like a rock star. Do it. Kenny Chesney, no hat. Do it. Jimmy Fallon, "You're rich when you put that on and everybody who works for you goes, oh yeah, it looks great. You're a man of the people. Just going to space." Fallon, "He looks like a mashup between Buzz Lightyear and Woody." Yeah, kind of does. Fallon, "He got the spacesuit and cowboy hat together by searching for the midlife crisis bundle. Is a soul patch too much?" Colbert, "A cowboy hat? So he went into space and somehow became extra divorced." Jon Stewart is almost coming back from MacRumors.com, your home for comedy news. They talked about a 3-minute video shared on Twitter featuring a comedy skit making fun of tech company billionaires and space aficionados Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, and Richard Branson. Bezos is played by Jason Alexander. Jason Alexander would also be a really good Kenny Chesney without a hat. Again, Google it. Look it up. Bezos is played by Jason Alexander, while a mop takes on the role of Richard Branson. And the short also stars Tracy Morgan, of course. Mac Rumor says, "We don't know a whole lot about Jon Stewart's upcoming show," which is what this video is promoting, but Apple has described it as a multiple-season single-issue series with each issue to be about an hour long. In other words, we're all going to tune in and be like, oh, we don't want serious Jon Stewart. Is Last Week Tonight on? From Variety, radio personality Charlemagne the God is getting a show on Comedy Central. It will be called The God's Honest Truth with Leonard Charlemagne McKelvey. The weekly half-hour show premieres September 17th at 10 o'clock and promises to revolve around Charlemagne's, quotes, culturally fluent take on social issues, unquote, and also features sketches, interviews, and, quote, social experiments, unquote. Social experiments worries me. I don't want to tell you why, but think of some of the people in the past who did social experiments. I don't think Charlemagne is that type of person. No social experiments. Don't do that. Ted Lasso is back, which means my wife is going to want to watch TV with me, but the Mets are on tonight. Come on. I'm seeing lots of good reviews. I'm not clicking on the reviews because I started to go down one and it was very spoilery, and I don't want Ted Lasso spoilers, but the overall gist seems to be that season 2 is pretty good. I'm worried about the backlash because everybody who watched season 1, including me, raved about it, and now everybody's saying season 2 is awesome. So that means the backlash of Ted Lasso's not that good is coming, right? From The Hollywood Reporter, Jason Sudeikis, star of Ted Lasso. He plays Ted Lasso. He took the time to explain why he wore a Jaden and Marcus and Bukayo sweatshirt to the season 2 premiere of Ted Lasso. He told Colbert about this. And he said, well, Jaden, Marcus, and Bukayo are 3 of the English footballers from the national team. Yeah, they're the last young fellas that took the penalty kicks. They didn't turn out the way certainly England would have hoped. Certainly a lot of us here in the States would have too, and people worldwide. And they caught a lot of guff online, the three young black men, and our show is rooted in both, despising things like bullying and racism and whatnot, but it's also rooted and takes place in London and England. And so, yeah, it was just our way to use this big fancy premiere to spotlight them and let them know we got their back. The audience applauded Sudeikis, who looked uncomfortable at the applause, and he was mindful to remind people that he had done nothing beyond wear a sweatshirt and didn't deserve praise. He said, I don't mind taking claps for the show, but like taking claps for that's nothing like what they've gone through and what they do. As for the design of the shirt and the use of the players' first names, Sudeikis said, it was just a way to humanize and personify those three fellas. Their surnames are on the back of their kits, their uniform, so that's why I use the first names, the names their parents gave them because they're kids, they're young men, and they should have the opportunity to succeed and fall and tie like everyone. Apple Insider, we're all about Apple today on Daily Comedy News. They said Bill Lawrence, showrunner of the aforementioned Ted Lasso, says it's hard to write cheery optimism, but seeing audiences react so positively is overwhelming. I can tell you what Jason and I and the co-creators and the whole writing staff talked about beforehand, which was that world discourse, specifically on social media and in politics, had gotten to such a cynical, dark place that it was just pervasively gross. We even joked in the writer's room that if I was to meet someone like Ted Lasso in real life, I wouldn't be happy. My first assumption would be, I can't wait for a week from now when this person reveals himself to be an a-hole like everybody else. When that person turns out to be actually kind and forgiving and empathetic and lovely, then you've got to look at yourself. That's the point of this. I think what we're really talking about on some level, writing with heart and empathy. I always dug doing that in Scrubs. It was a lot easier in that case just because they were characters that were of service and cared about whether or not people lived or died. I think it's tricky to always stay positive, but in Ted Lasso, there's the smoke and mirrors of pervasive optimism. You're still talking about a show in which at the end of the day, Ted has panic attacks and his wife left him. Just cheery optimism is nearly impossible. It has to be amongst the real pathos of life in order to work. I think the coolest thing that was we created a positive experience on the gig, and the fact that other people seemed to be responding to it was just, man, it was overwhelmingly cool, unexpected, and fun to watch. We're all grateful to be working on something that was inherently optimistic in many ways. It almost felt therapeutic to be working on it. That was without knowing at all whether or not it would work. I've said this on the podcast before. Ted Lasso was my favorite thing of 2020. I don't mean my favorite TV show. I don't mean my favorite comedy. It was my favorite thing of 2020. Watch Ted Lasso. I wanted to catch up on Instagram two things. The first of which, Lane Spurkis commented on my half-ass Jeff Foxworthy impression from Wednesday's podcast. And Lane asked, which is more half-ass, the Foxworthy impression or the Seinfeld impression? I answered, the Foxworthy impression is more half-ass, and here's why. The Foxworthy I'm doing is the Foxworthy everybody does. It's you start up high and you kind of drop your voice. So a typical Jeff Foxworthy. And by the way, in case you haven't noticed, I'm not an impressionist. These are half-ass impressions. But the way I approach Foxworthy, you start high, and then he drops his voice. So it's, if you insert the punchline here, and then you drop your voice, you might be a redneck. So if you insert the punchline here, you might be a redneck. That's all I'm doing. That's very half-ass. Now, were I to do half-ass Jerry Seinfeld, it would be, what's the deal with peanuts? Are they peas? Are they nuts? That everybody does that sing-song Jerry. I don't even do a quarter-ass Jerry Seinfeld, but it's that sing-songy, you ever notice, da-da-da, what's the deal, da-da-da. I don't do that. I do angry, frustrated Jerry Seinfeld. And I can actually channel it right now because I got an annoying text in the middle of the show. Just now, I got a spam text. John, the next successful hit story could be yours. Why are you texting me about the show? I'm trying to record here. That's just half-ass, angry Jerry Seinfeld. That's all I'm doing there. Lane asks, what future episodes feature impressions that are other fractions of ass, perhaps a quarter-ass Stephen Wright impression? Haven't pondered that one, but I think it's pretty obvious how to approach that. I do enjoy doing Mitch Hedberg. I'll circle back to that in a second. And Lane suggests, or a whole-ass Joe Piscopo one. Wow, I'd really have to think about how to channel Joe Piscopo. Now, as for Hedberg, I was thinking about all this in the car. So back to my lame, what's the deal with peanuts? Are they peas? Are they nuts? Now, if you do that as half-ass Jeff Foxworthy, it's actually kind of funny-ish. What's the deal with peanuts? Are they peas? Are they nuts? You might be right, right? Or I was imagining Mitch Hedberg doing it. And to me, Mitch was always funniest when he thought he was being ridiculous and not all that funny. So like, I really like peanuts. Are they peas? Are they nuts? That's ridiculous. All right. And he would just crack himself up like that. Again, are any of these impressions good? No, I am not saying they are good. This segment is called Half-Ass Impressions. So about a week ago on Instagram at Daily Comedy News, I asked who your favorite comedian was. At that particular second in time, I said Mitch Hedberg. Some days, if you ask me, I will say George Carlin. I grew up on George Carlin comedy cassettes and watching his HBO specials, and I was lucky to get to be friendly with his daughter, Kelly Carlin. I never met George, though. But most days, if you ask me, I will say Mitch Hedberg. Crosby_Nathan said the legend Robin Williams. Wonder if Robin Williams as a stand-up is starting to be forgotten. His movies will never be forgotten, but his stand-up work is starting to be obscured. I mentioned here I program the comedy channels on the Live by Live app, and I think Robin's last release was 2010, so he's starting to be in the rearview mirror now, but Robin Williams, obviously a great choice. Lane Spurka said, my favorite comedian is Bobcat Goldthwait. Do not ask me to explain. I know you just told me not to ask you to explain, but I'm going to ask you to explain. Are you into the Bobcat persona, that he used to do? Or are you into current Bobcat? Or if he does it, it's cool with you? I would be curious about that. I loved his Bono impression. When I first saw that, it blew my mind. Jerry McLean said Chappelle. Bill Burr is riding a close second, though. His podcast has been a regular listen for many years, but Dave will always be the king for survival and growth. I agreed. What I really appreciate about Chappelle is Chappelle has something to say. Bill, I think, is just kind of riffing and funny, and Bill is obviously hilarious. But like Chappelle, he's got that extra gear of, I'm here to make a point, and it could be funny doing it. Caitlin likes Chelsea Peretti. I don't think I've ever seen Chelsea live in person. Interesting pick there. I don't have an opinion on Chelsea Peretti because I've never seen Chelsea live. That's very interesting. J.D. Cotter, Stephen Wright, Mitch Hedberg, Sam Kinison. I always think about the first time you saw Sam Kinison and how he just like blew the doors off your TV. That's not a phrase, but you know what I mean? Like, I remember when I first saw him and I was like, whoa, this guy. Hedberg already discussed. Hedberg clearly doing a descendant of Stephen Wright's act back in the 80s. I loved Stephen Wright as well. J.D. Cotter, 1979. I think you're showing your age there. Tugond said Eddie Murphy's Delirious is still untouched. I agree. Now, some of the stuff there, you watch it. I Come in Peace. He has a bit. It is entitled Faggots. Not sure that's aged all that well. Some of that stuff not aged all that well. But Eddie Murphy Delirious is great. Tugond said, when I want to watch a show that's going to have me crying, I listen to Jim Breuer. Mitch is amazing too. Jim Breuer is really, really good in person. You probably only know him from Half Baked and Goat Boy on SNL. If Jim Breuer comes to your town, go see him. Immensely talented, great guy. I know Jim well. We worked together for about a decade. I've been to his house. We are friends. Could call Jim right now. But he's got this ability to read the room, see who the crowd is, and just react to the crowd that's there, rather than do just whatever act he had set up. And because he's reacting to who's in the room, you just get a better show. And then cycling back to impressions, I used to do a really good Jim. Jim hosted afternoons on the Raw Dog channel when I was the boss over there. And just listening to Jim every day, I could channel Jim. I'm not going to attempt it now because I'm not feeling it. But when I do a Jim Breuer impression, I can nail it. Maybe next week. I know you can't wait. Tugond added about Breuer. He's got everything. Stories, impressions, music references. He's dope. I agree. That is your comedy news for today. Follow this show on Spotify, Google Podcasts, George Lopez Tacos, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your shows. Normal episodes all weekend, so I will see you back here tomorrow. Good stuff. Instagram at Daily Comedy News. I'd love to hear your favorite comedian.